The third UK Communities Conference took place again at Braziers Park in Oxfordshire during July 2024. It was a well-attended in-person event that was enjoyed by many. The Intentional Communities Research Group has been running symposia since 2014. Their 2024 symposium became a part of the UK Communities Conference, with live sessions every evening that were also streamed online to participants around the world. On Friday, July the 19th, the symposium focused on the practical skills and experience of living in a community, with contributions from Allison and Amanda Garland of Earthsong Community in New Zealand, and then later John Dawson from Co-operatives UK. The session was chaired by Kirsten Stevens-Wood, who is a senior lecturer at Cardiff Metropolitan University. We go straight into Amanda reading Earthsong's vision statement.
Shall I just read it out, Robin?
Yes, would you like to read it out?
Earthsong's vision statement, which is like the keystone, really, to us. We keep going back to it and reminding ourselves of it. Our vision is to establish and maintain a co-housing neighbourhood based on the principles of permaculture that will serve as a model of a socially and environmentally sustainable community. Robin.
So it's really, it sets the foundation of our purpose. The second one is about membership. So you need to know who your people are, who have basically made the commitment to be part of the group, and earned the right really to be part of consensus. In our case, we have self-select people. We don't ever select people. Self-select to live at Earthsong. Sorry, Amanda. Would you just go through that one?
So that includes owners or renters, as it says on the thing, and all adult residents must become members, ideally within 4 to 6 months of living here. But we are reviewing quite a lot of our processes at the moment and hope that people will be quite far along the membership before they ever signed an agreement to buy or own, because it makes a huge difference to be well integrated before you arrive. So we have a buddying process for people too when they do start to wish to become a member. We won't be talking about that now. So the membership process includes a threshold, having to step over the place when you've really learnt as much as possible before you're given your card. So your initial period to learn who we are and what we're doing, and that would be coming to a public tour or having a tour, perhaps reading Robin's book or the co-housing book. And certainly you're invited to come to a common meal, join in a working bee. When you've come to live here, signing the membership agreement, which includes our vision statement. I'm not sure if we're going to have that up as a slide.
No,
not sorry, not
really,
the vision statement. I meant to
just
say
really quickly, Dale.
You go for it.
Just a quick overview, really. So people sign a one-page agreement, which includes the basic structures that they're agreeing to. And at that point, they're given a set of coloured cards and can participate fully in our decision making.
What I wanted to say was the communications agreement.
Number 3 is that we have a set of communication agreements that we put together right at the beginning. Other communities, obviously, you may choose different things, but this has also been very important as a foundational agreement. So we all know what we've agreed to. We're all kind of on the same page. And then we have our decision-making structure, which includes how we organise our group and our meeting procedures and the process, which is the coloured card system, which we'll get to in a minute. So our group structure is we have the Earthsong full group, which meets once a month and makes the major decisions. We also have smaller task groups or focus groups that look after different aspects of Earthsong. I won't spend any time on that, but so basically anyone can go to any of these focus groups to talk about the things that they're interested in. The information is out there. Everyone knows what the agendas are, what's going to be discussed, and gets minutes about what happened afterwards. And those smaller groups can make some decisions, but the bigger decisions go to the full group once a month. And the meeting culture is important. So this is an example. With every full group meeting, we have one member who sets up a table in the middle and puts beautiful seasonal fruits and flowers and a candle. And it rests in the middle of our meeting every time as a reminder, I think, that what we're doing is quite extraordinary, actually. 45 adults giving up 3 hours of their Saturday morning to sit together, to listen to each other and to work to find the way forward that works as well as possible for everybody. And I think that is quite extraordinary, and it's good to be reminded that this is special. This is really wonderful, and is worth committing to. So the meeting procedures, that I won't spend time on that either. It's just everyone knows what's going to be talked about. Amanda, perhaps you could talk about the facilitation just quickly at this point.
Yeah, to remind ourselves what it's for. To be facilitated is part of the container. It's holding the space to enable the group to do its work. And at Earthsong, we have a group of facilitators, and we take turns to be the main facilitator, and there's always the group of us in the room. So we always have a check-in at the beginning of all our meetings, actually, the focus group ones as well, and certainly at the beginning of our full group meetings, which is the once a month. And that can take quite a long time, and it's incredibly important for us to bring ourselves in with where we're at. And it often helps with the tone of the work part of the meeting, as well as for us as a group to connect with each other. Timekeeping is very important, and we use the coloured cards, and minutes are taken for the work part. We certainly don't use them in our check-in part. And afterwards, the facilitators have a debrief together, which is a very important process for the facilitators and for what we've learned about anything, as much as feeling of the room. Yeah, we have a quorum necessary, but we don't have proxies. If you want to come back to a decision, you need to raise it in the next full group meeting. So that's an important container really as well. Once a decision is passed, it stays that way until it's reviewed, and the only opportunity is in the next full group meeting to be reviewed. Otherwise, we can go round and round in circles with people saying, I wasn't there, I didn't know what was going on. It's part of our agreements and the structure. There's always minutes to the meeting, which are approved in the following on in any other sort of meeting. And everything's archived, and we have a decision log, which Robin has put together. Yeah, Robin?
So coming to the central thing of this session, this is our coloured card system, which is the tool that we use both for discussions in the full group and for decision making. We're going to come back to this slide in a minute, but just in the context of our structures, that's an important tool. And then the process, Amanda did go through that quickly. But just to say that if a proposal is red carded, which means that somebody says no, we do have an option of a 75% majority vote after sufficient time. So that was really important during development, when we had, you know, a lot of money at stake and decisions needed to be made. We've only used it twice in 25 years, but I think having a voting fallback is quite useful. And then the last one, information. Basically, if the group, everyone needs access to the same information. So if you're going to make decisions by consensus, that information has to be freely available to people if they choose to read it. So everyone knows when the meetings are and what's on the agenda, all the background information the minutes afterwards. And does it work? Yep, it really works. Sometimes it can get, you know, take a while, a bit ground down, but it really does. Every decision of any note at all at Earthsong for the last 29 years has been made by consensus of the self-selected group of members. So I think that's a pretty powerful endorsement. My book, as Kirsten said, is available online. And yeah, just coming back to the group, you know, the group of individuals, both of those aspects are important, and it's pretty powerful. So I'm going to hand over to Amanda to go through the coloured cards, the meanings of the cards, and then she's going to facilitate a trial run.
Could I just ask for how much time we have left, Kirsten?
You have half an hour.
Okay.
And if you're a bit short of half an hour, then we'll go to questions and answers, because I'm sure people will be itching. And if we don't squeeze question and answers in, I suppose what we could do is maybe set up a page which we send you afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, great. So here are our we call them colours of empowerment, if you like, in that little slide. And if you've got hold of some cards, that would be great. And if you were able to look at the link, that would be good too. So they have a priority, and we'll talk about the discussion first. So we use them differently. We use them in discussion mode, and then when we are carding in consensus. We won't talk about the black card because that's not relevant to us now, but it is an important card that we invented for Earthsong, which when we were given this or adopted this way of working, which is very common in co-housing, but there are differences we've discovered in our travels. So at Earthsong, this slide doesn't show clearly that it's a red one at the top and then an orange one below the black. So that's just to remind you that the first card there is red, and that is I have an observation process. A process observation, sorry. So somebody, this card will stop the meeting and be prioritized. And someone might be saying, you're going off topic. I'm too hot in here. I need the window open. It's to help move us along and make us more comfortable. But it's a process observation card in the discussion mode. The orange card is often just waved, and you might see us doing that. I could wave that for Robin now at the beginning. It's an appreciation and it's an acknowledgement. If we're waving it, and quite often a lot of them are waved, that is a way that we say, I think that's great, thank you very much for that work. Sometimes people want to speak to it and make sure that that acknowledgement is minuted as well, but normally they just get waved. It also means I agree with what you're saying, perhaps if someone said something. Yellow is always I have a question in both ways that we use the cards. And that is the first card that we will ask people who are holding it up to talk to. It prioritizes the next two. The green card means I have an answer to that question, or I can give more information, which helps the process. And the blue card, which is the least priority, is I have a comment or an opinion. That's very important. Now we will come back to reminding you of that. So what we're trying to do is get all the questions answered before the opinions come out. And it's quite tricky to learn to do that. Lots of people give an opinion in their question, and it takes up a lot of time, and it also can affect the way the group processes. But what we want is the information. So going into the using the cards for carding and consensus, we'll go the other way round this time. The green card is, I agree with this proposal. I'm really quite happy with it. Go for it. The blue is, I'm neutral. I have a few reservations, but I'm okay with it, really. And you might have spoken to those reservations in the processing discussion. I still need to have a question answered before I can card. And so that might happen in that part of the proceedings. Orange is, I have a serious reservation about this, and I will block consensus. But I will not block consensus. Sorry. And I'll come back to something in a minute about that. And red is, I am blocking this proposal. How we actually use this and what is written on the card is still in discussion at Earthsong. So sometimes it just says, I will block it, and that's it. I'm entirely against this proposal. We've also tried saying, I will block this because I don't think it's in the best interests of the group, or I'm willing to help find a solution. And at Earthsong, we are reviewing how we end up describing the use of this card in the carding process. If these two cards are shown, those people get a chance to speak to their card, why they've put them up, and that is minuted. The other cards are not given that opportunity because they're quite comfortable. But these two get to speak to it, and then we recard. Quite often, people who've red carded at first, or even orange carded, once they've had their feelings, reservations minuted, they might move down. So those are important. It's more that they wanted their unhappiness with the decision to be noted, but they're not going to block it because of the benefit to the group. Okay, I think that's enough of that now. I could take a few questions if that sounded clear enough, or if there's more that anyone wanted. I don't know, Kirsten, if you had a sense of that. Robin, anyone else? I can't see everybody. That's the thing now.
I think what we'll probably do is maybe open up for some questions once we've gone into the next stage.
The process. Okay. I'm going to need that off the screen for me. Yep. Because I need to be able to see as many people as I can to facilitate the next bit.
Yeah.
So
we'll just go through the proposal first. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's got to be on the screen now, is it?
Yeah. So just before I stop screen sharing, this is what we have thought we would have a go at doing today. And I will take the role of being the person from the permaculture focus group who is speaking to this proposal at the full group. So I want to say that permaculture's been talking about chickens. We've had chickens in the past down the back in the orchards, remember, but these got killed by dogs. And so we thought we'd trial chickens right in the middle of Earthsong on our common green where they'll be safe. It'll also be useful to demonstrate permaculture principles. It'll be great for children. And so we'd really like to set up fence an area up to 1/3 of the common green for chickens. And that's the proposal we're seeking agreement on at this meeting. So I'll stop screen sharing. And over to you.
Okay. So are there more people online that I can't see? Because I only see 4 people and the group. in the room? Oh, here we
There are
go.
a few
There's
of
some
us online, but you've got more people in the room. The people in the room have got cards. I think Tom might have his own cards, and I've managed to just kind of scrape together some stuff, having forgotten to keep myself as back.
Okay. Is that an orange or an
There
apple?
are 16 sets of cards in the room in the oh, very
Red.
good.
It's great. Well, I mean, we'll do what we can, and we've chosen this proposal because it can be quite fun, but hopefully it'll get through to how we do things. So we're going to have 10 minutes for discussion time, which is one of the first things we do when we go through agenda. We ask how long we think we're going to need. So before we go through the whole agenda, we'll work out a time, and keeping to time is important because otherwise people can get very jaded and tired. And we can always come back if we don't get to the point of finishing with the proposal. So who's got some cards then? I mean, are there going to be everybody in the room down in the...
You should be able to see the room. I can see a yellow card.
Right.
I can see
Yeah, I
people
can see lots of,
waving
right.
cards.
Right. So normally I'd be able to see everybody in the room at once, and I'd have a co-facilitator as well. And we would notice the order as best as we can of who puts the card up first. And we would ask people to ask their questions or give their answers in the order that they put their cards up. That's the idea. So we won't be able to do that fully here.
We do have somebody in the room who will be able to just go over and say, I see you've got a yellow card. Would you like to?
Okay.
Is that how is? I think that's maybe how we'll.
How we'll do it. Okay. So that person can yell it out for me, then that helps. There's an orange here, there's a red here, there's a whatever. And just feel free to play with this. Some of you might take the role of being in the membership group. Oh, process observation. Is that what you're...
I'm playing with my card. Sorry.
Okay.
I thought I was blocking, but I forgot we're in discussion now.
You're in discussion mode, yep. So again, this is a process observation. This is appreciation, orange. Question is yellow. Answer or more information is green. And blue is an opinion. Okay. So so if some people could perhaps be on the role with Robin as members of permaculture to give up answers. Make up what you like. We certainly have a common green right next to our common house at Earthsong, next to some community gardens, and all of our housing sort of sits in a variation around that with an orchard at the end. So that's just a little place.
I can see a yellow card been held up for a while. So there's a guy in a t-shirt with a mustache and lovely dark hair. So do you have a question?
Yeah, it's what will fencing off 1/3 of the common green limit or stop happening in the future?
I couldn't hear, I'm sorry.
Oh, can I talk about what will fencing off 1/3 of the common green limit or stop happening in the future?
All right. Any green cards coming up?
Yeah, we've got green cards. Green cards, yeah.
It has a potential of meaning that we can't build a pond.
Okay,
cool.
You heard that?
I'm not hearing it very well, I'm sorry. Something about a pond?
Yeah.
But it means that we might not be able to build a pond in the future.
Okay. Robin, you had a red card.
Process observation. I think that question is more eliciting opinions than information. Because unless there were plans to do something else already, that's kind of like asking, what else could we do? It's kind of like a we question. So just a little observation there.
Yeah. And just a bit more information, though there is a facilitator holding the space, it's not that they run the whole group. Members of Earthsong will come in with a process observation like that, quicker than the facilitator who might be looking at things. We're looking after the group in an equal way. Yep, that's the container.
Yeah. So sorry, what I meant was it's a really good question, but it's a question that anyone can answer with opinions.
Yellow card from Kirsten.
I was answering it pretending that we actually have information that means we know that there's an alternative plan about the pity was really right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an opinion about bond, it was like a
Good one.
I think that was
Kirsten.
So I know that if I was really a member of your community, I would know this, but I guess I'm asking this question. If this space is going to be made available for chickens, how many vegans do you have in your community?
Somebody?
Anyone can answer. Make it up.
Yeah, green cards.
12.
12. Okay. So more information. The chickens are not for eating. They are for eating scraps, and their waste goes back into our composts. But that might affect some people's opinions as Sorry, Robin?
We've got some more. We've got some more
eggs.
cards here.
Yeah.
There's a chap at the back first.
Can you hear me?
Just about.
I'm wondering about an alternative solution. I know of roosters killing a predatory fox. So my question is, how many roosters do we have? How many hens? And how many dogs are threats?
Right. Thank you. So just to notice, and it's not a criticism of you, but you didn't. Your question came a bit after something that you wanted to fill in as experience that you already had or knew about. But it's a straight question too. Robin, did you want to answer that?
Well, in Auckland, we're actually not allowed roosters, and there's a limit of 12 hens anyway.
Any more yellow? Any more blue? Are there any blue cards? Because opinions, it's important that there's some opinions.
So my question is whether this is going to be a permanent structure that's being built, or whether there's a possibility to trial it out and move it if it doesn't work.
So let's have someone from permaculture.
Well,
okay, Kirsten.
Oh, sorry.
I'll play permaculture.
Good.
So if we were going to adhere to permaculture principles, we'd probably move the chickens every 6 to 8 weeks. So actually, although we're saying a third, we're going to be moving it to the other third in 6 weeks and then back to the first third in another 6 weeks. I hope everybody's okay with that.
Thank you. No, I'm aware we don't have a lot of time already. This is very rushed, but what that offers is a chance, which I as a facilitator might say, or someone else in the group might say, to change the wording in the proposal. So do we want to change the wording in the proposal which accommodates the fact that we might do it for a short period of time? That might make it go through, whereas if we didn't do that, it might not.
I can see, is it yellow, or there's a wavy card? There's a blue wavy card.
A blue, okay, so are there any yellow cards up? Because theoretically the blue is last. But
Penny, you'll have to guide us.
Yeah, yellow card over here.
Okay, yellow card.
Are there any groups that will be like pushed out of the spaces that they're now going to occupy, or are there any people that won't be able to access it, for that accessibility in terms of how people that can't climb a fence are going to get over to engage with the chickens if they want to? And are there any groups that have been pushed out because we're going to put chickens?
You might have to summarise that, Penny.
Are there any groups that are going to be pushed out because of the placement of the chickens?
Permaculture.
Well, I mean, again, I think that's something that anyone can answer, because okay, there's nothing happening on that space at the moment. That's the information, but the rest of it, what else could happen, is kind of like up to all of us.
Yeah.
Okay, got another yellow card here.
We're going to have one more yellow, and then we'll have an opinion that's an opinion, and then we will stop the process and move into the second one, which is the actual carding on it. Okay. So the next question, please.
I come from a woodland, and with climate change, it's going to get so hot. So I want to be in the orchard, and I don't. Why will the fence be suddenly safer for me on the green rather than the orchard?
For information, I agree. As a chicken advocate.
So if you're agreeing with that question, you'd be waving your orange card. That's what we would be doing.
Wait, what?
You'd be waving your orange card. Yeah. Okay. So does someone want? Robin's got a green card. It's anyone I can see. I'm sorry about that, everybody. Robin.
Yeah. I mean, I think the point is that we wanted them in around where all the people are, make them safe. Yeah, I totally get your point about shade and in terms of the health of the chicken.
Yeah. So is there an opinion card there? Like someone says, I really don't want the chickens there because, or I really think it's fantastic to showcase what we do. I mean, opinion card would be great. Someone else's. No. Yeah. Okay, there's one. I can see him.
If we put chickens at the centre of our community, what does that say about our community? Is that an opinion? I don't know.
It's again something so what? Okay. We don't necessarily respond to an opinion, though in a way that is more of a question. But again, as Robin said, it could be answered by anybody. What it shows us is that we haven't had enough time in the focus group to really discuss this. But this is what we have to play with here. So hopefully all these things will have been nutted out more in the focus group. But what we're going to do now is we're going to change the wording of this proposal so that instead of saying that we fence up to 1/3 of the common green for chickens, we'll add for a trial period of 6 months. Okay, it might be more likely to go through or not. So we're going to start to work now in carding. So normally what happens is we've made that adjustment. It's been agreed by the permaculture group, and the minute taker will read it out, sort of as I just did, and then we will hold up our cards in the carding mode as to what we feel about it. And the facilitator does that too. They don't tend to take part in the discussion when they're facilitating, and if they do, they hand over to their co-facilitator for the whole of that topic, but that's another long discussion. So hold up your cards with the proposal that we fence up one. Sorry?
There's a question here.
Okay.
Hold up their card at the same time as everyone else.
Yep, we all hold them up together. So hold up your cards so there's and if someone who's there could count the green cards, please.
Just run through the colours again quickly.
The green is I absolutely agree, I'm fine with it. The blue is I'm okay, but I've sort of got a few reservations, but I'm okay. Orange is I'm really not happy about it, but I'm not going to block it. And red is I block this. I say no.
7 green.
Right, 7 green. Yep.
4
and was that 4 blue?
4 orange, 4 blue, 1 red.
You get that?
Right.
Brilliant. So now what we do is thank you very much, and ask the orange card people to speak to why they've used the orange card. So Kirsten, I can see yours easily. So if you go first, please.
Okay, so I understand that this means that I won't block it, but that I have some serious reservations.
Absolutely.
So I'm quite keen for us to have chickens. I think they're a good thing to have, and they give us some level of sustainability. I'm not entirely convinced they should go where they are, but because it's a 6-month period, I'm prepared to give it a go if we can revisit in 6 months. So that's why I'm making the decision I'm having.
Thank you very much. Okay, and that will be minuted. Next, anyone else with an orange card to speak to their card?
Yeah, I don't think I feel satisfied by the answer to the question of them needing jungle and shade. I don't know whether we took that seriously enough, so I would not block it, but I would be watching carefully during the trial period that we had the chickens' interests in mind.
Thank you. The next orange card.
My reservation is that it's a common area and we're monopolising it with the chickens. So after the chickens leave, maybe the ground's going to be ruined and people can't use that space in a way that they maybe have vision for that the community might want to use them differently. So for a common area for a chicken.
But thank you. Now, occasionally somebody might say, look, I've just got a bit more information. You didn't get it. Of course, we'd have a shade cloth for the chickens and all that sort of thing. So that might happen in this part, but mostly it's just to record what people have said. But sometimes it feels clear that someone hasn't understood something or we haven't given enough information. So the last person who had an orange card, please.
Oh, yeah, similar. Yeah, just not really sure about using something so central to the community in that way, and whether or not we should prioritise chickens in the middle of our community. So similar.
Thank you.
But it's for 6 months, so.
Thank you. And the red card. Why are you blocking? Are you saying no?
As one of the 12 vegans, I am very concerned about the welfare of chickens. I'm also completely against using animals as labour and profiting from them.
Okay, great. Thank you. So all that's minuted, and then we recard again. There might have been a chance that we might have tweaked that proposal again in this point, but we're not going to do that. So now you recard with the same proposal as it was, and I'm not going to read it out again because of time. So if someone could count the cards, please, and it be. Yeah. Some people might have thought, oh, who had a blue card, they might think, actually, I really agree with what the orange card people say, so I'm going to put an orange card up this time. And someone else might think, I've gone from orange to red as well. And some people might have changed the other way. So if we could count the cards again, please.
Yeah, so I think it's 5, 3, 4 blue. Is that blue? 1, 2, 3, 4 orange, 2 red. Oh.
2 red, okay. Thank you. So the proposal has not gone through, and that's fine. It means there's a lot more work to do and more discussion to be had in the community. But as an example of how we do things, that shows you that consensus isn't about a yes or a no. It's about being in conversation, and there's different variations of how much one doesn't agree. What we don't have a chance to really tease out here is how important it is to get the red card, the yellow card questions out before we have an opinion. And that's really hard to do, because the opinions are often changed. People might be putting up an opinion straight away saying, I really am against it because I'm vegan, or all the kind of things that we had. And then someone else says something that makes them change their opinion and they put it down. You might also find that's about, I don't know, 10 yellow cards go up once when the presentation and the proposal has been completed. And then as those questions are answered, it's the same question as someone else. I think someone said, oh, that's the same as someone else. And they put their question down, the card down, because you're not going to repeat yourself then. Your question is done. you've got the answer. So quite quickly, you can get a lot of information out because there's not a lot of repetition, and people are changing their minds as they go along and are hearing things and getting more information. We didn't have nearly enough time to really expand the information, but I can tell you what we did at Earthsong when we had this very proposal at one point. And it was partly because the children so wanted the chickens as pets that we did have a little trial run. It was also preparing the beds for planting up more gardens, and then we did decide to build a proper chicken run in the orchard. So we ended up with a trial period, but people were, you know, there was all sorts of contention about it, as there always and often is. Anyway, so thank you very much. I'll hand back to Robin and we can have questions.
So just to give you a bit of a time check, guys, I think we can probably run over by about 5 to 10 minutes because my next person hasn't checked in yet, so that's fine. So if you want to take some questions after you've had a chance to sum up, Robin, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I've got a question here.
And do use your cards with the questions.
Okay.
Or even, you know, the orange, or you've got a process, you know.
No.
Question.
Yeah.
So I was wondering about instructions that might seem like a bit tangential to the conversation. Like with this example, I was thinking if dogs are eating the chickens, then is that potentially a dangerous area? And like could other things and maybe children be at risk, and really like, is that something like, so like if people have those kind of questions that are like kind of adjacent to the main discussion, do you keep some kind of log of them, or do people bring them to a different meeting, or?
Ideally,
you might need to summarize that one, Penny, because the acoustics are pretty awful.
Okay. Basically, if a question comes up during discussion of a topic which is kind of adjacent or slightly tangential to the main topic. So the example given was, what if, you know, because dogs have killed chickens, are dogs also dangerous to children? How do you handle that kind of question?
Do you want to answer?
Okay, well, I mean, we generally give enough space for a discussion. However, if it goes on down a particular line, at some point somebody's going to say, look, I think we've gone off topic. You know, maybe we need more time in the focus group to really talk this through, or, you know, that's a little bit separate. Let's stick to the topic we're talking about. Yeah, it's very fluid, and it really does depend on the facilitator being able to navigate you know, what's happening in the room. But it's not just the facilitator. Actually, every one of us is responsible for what happens and how it happens. And so it will often be somebody else who might hold up an orange card and say, you know, look, that's an interesting topic, but a red card, sorry. But it's not what we're discussing today. So it's all about sort of self-responsibility and all of us kind of saying when we can see something happening.
Any more questions?
Question from online here, from Chris Austin. Can any red card block a proposal, even if it is an opinion? Or is the block only for things that are against the core values or visions of the intentional community?
Good question. So as I said at the beginning, ideally consensus is about what is in the best interests of the whole. That's so it's not just I don't want chickens. It's given all of our discussion, what's the best way forward here. So you know, it can be tempting to use a red card to say no, I just don't want it. But I think people need reminding that this is not a personal. It's not about taking a personal stand, really. It should be about how can we resolve this together, and it might need more time and other meetings to do that.
So
more questions
first, and then coming your way after. Yeah.
How big a group can use this procedure?
We think Earthsong's on the big side, and I think the size of a group is really important. And as I said, everyone has to be agreeing to use the way of doing so. So we'd never have more than 40, 45 people in a group. And working this way with cards, you can do a lot of work, though it's when you're in the room together. So yeah, I'd say the biggest is about 40 to 45.
Well, we haven't really tried them with more, but I think as the group gets bigger, it is more useful. So we don't sometimes use them at the focus groups, but only really when the numbers get up to about 6 or 7, and then they start becoming useful. Any less than that, and they just get in the way a bit. But yeah, definitely up to 40 or 50, and possibly more, but we haven't had that experience.
I have a quick question, and then I am afraid that we're going to have to wind this session up, even though
yes, we are. I can see the time.
You've got through an awful lot, and it's you've actually given us a really good example to work with. And we'll leave the cards in the room if people want to play with them at any point in the conference. I've got a quick one, which is: do you ever have serial blockers? And you know, is there any way of avoiding serial blockers? You know, is there if you've got someone that you're kind of like, oh, here we go again, up comes the red card, is there a way of dealing with that?
There are certainly some who use red cards more than others, for sure. I wouldn't say they were serial blockers, but this is when that definition of you know, I blocked this proposal and I am willing to help find a collective solution. That's when that really comes into its own. So some people, in some communities, the person who blocks actually has a responsibility to organise a new meeting with people of diverse opinions to come up with another solution. And they have 3 months to do that. And if they don't, then actually the decision stands. So I think that's a really useful way of making sure that people don't use it just to get their own way, but they have a commitment to actually, okay, I don't want this one, but we have to sort something out that we are all willing to say yes to.
And some of the things we've observed, because often we'll have a whole lot of discussion rather than a proposal in the full group when the focus group is processing something, and they want to get a sense of where it is in the group. And then, so a lot of work has been done, a lot of minutes have been put out, and then they come to the full group when they actually propose. And quite often we've found that people who are red carding are ones who don't know that background well enough, and they haven't been party to that. So someone's been away for three months and they come along and say, I don't want chickens, no. You know, they haven't actually found out anything about it. And so that's quite important about the continuity of involvement and keeping up tabs on things.
Okay, well, thank you, Robin, and thank you, Amanda. It's been really useful, really helpful. I hope people in the room got something out of that, and they want to play with the cards, then we can. Yeah. And thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for being very patient with us in this context. So yeah, and it's early morning for us. It was 6 o'clock when we started.
Go have your breakfast coffee. You're very welcome.
And just to, sorry, Kirsten, just to remind you that there is that 1-page PDF that people can, that explains the whole process. So so do have a look at that and follow up.
And obviously you're very welcome to stay with us for the second session as you go get your breakfast coffee.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Bye-bye.
So big breath, everybody, because we are now going to change gear and we are going to welcome another person who's going to give us an hour's session. So this is John Dawson. John, if you could just give us a wave on the screen so people can see you. Yes, thank you. And thank you very much for coming, John. So John works for the Co-operatives UK, and I believe that you're quite heavily involved in working around things like share offers and setting up and running share offers. Are you likely to be sharing your screen and presenting, John?
Hi, Kirsten. Hi, everyone. Yes, if I can, please. I'll just.
Yeah, no problem. So we might have a little bit of a change. What we've got happening at the moment is we've got a room full of people in a conference called Braziers Park Community Conference, and then we've got a number of people who are joining us online for the session as well. So there might be a little bit of a shift over with people coming and going in the room, because there'll be different people coming in for the share offer than will have arrived for the consensus, and people will shuffle back and forth. And other than that, we're also going to be recording, John, if that's okay.
Yeah, totally fine.
Brilliant. So if I give you a shout, if you'd not, I'm thinking maybe sort of 40 minutes, and then maybe a little bit of question and answer after that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. And thank you for doing this out of hours. It's very much appreciated.
Okay. Well, yeah, well, thanks for inviting me. And it's good to be here on I'm in Sheffield. It's a very warm evening, and I'm in my loft in Sheffield where the heat just rises. So if I start to melt a little bit, that is my excuse. And it looks like the sun is pouring in there as well. So it looks hopefully like a nice evening everywhere.
It's really warm.
I feel like that last speaker was really interesting. I've sort of come in, a lot of expectations to live up to, and like a lot of pace to keep up. So hopefully people will be able to stick with this. I'll try not to use too much jargon. If there are things you don't comprehend or you want me to slow down, just let me know. And as Kirsten said, we can take some questions at the end as well. We can pick up bits. I have some slides which I think you should be able to see. Is that right?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Well, I'll share these with you afterwards as well, so don't feel like you need to scribble anything down. There are some web links in there which you can follow at your leisure as well. There are other documents we can share with you if that's useful too. So I work for an organisation called Co-operatives UK, and we're the national body of cooperative organisations. They range from the massive supermarkets that you'll be used to farmer co-ops, to small music co-ops, independent worker co-ops, and community-based co-ops. And it's the community-based co-ops that I take focus on in particular. And I head up our work on community shares, something which we call the community shares unit. So we exist to support and promote this concept of community shares. We encourage and support good practice. We publish guidance on how to run community share offers and something called the Community Shares Handbook. We have a system for evaluating standard mark documentation, so it can meet a minimum threshold of quality as it is an unregulated product. We also train and license a network of practitioners and experts around the country, so we can help people to access knowledge and experts who've been there and done this. We also capture data on who's running share offers and how many have existed. And we also run something called Community Shares Booster Funds. We provide hands-on support in terms of advice. We can provide development grants, and we can also provide investments into share offers. So we as Co-ops UK actually buy investments in community shares. So today I thought I would just run through these 4 items on the screen, which hopefully you can see. So just a little look at what are community shares. Some of you might be very familiar with them. For others, it might be something you're less familiar with. What does the community shared market look like? Who is using community shares? And then finally, how might you go about using community shares? What might you need to get in place to do that? So there's one of the pubs, the recent pubs here, the Hop Hole Inn, which has been raising money through community shares to buy the pub. So I don't know how well this will work, how interactive we can make this, but I was just interested at this stage in gauging a bit of feedback on people's knowledge really of community shares. So I wondered, has anyone invested in community shares? Are we able to maybe see any hands, or put a comment if you're online? Okay, I don't know if I can see any. Kirsten, you've got your hand up, so that's great. Running or have previously previously run a community share offer, anyone?
No.
No, or has anyone been on our practitioner training? No, that's fine. Okay, well, it's good to gauge sort of what stage we're at. Kirsten, you look like someone who have bought community shares, is that right?
Yeah, I'm not like any sort of major donor, but yeah, I think if I say shares, community energy, I think was something I did recently.
Okay, that makes sense. There's lots of community energy activity. Has been over the years, and particularly at the moment. On your screen, you'll see a building called Stretford Public Hall, which was owned by the council in Stretford for a number of years in Greater Manchester. The community around 8 or so years ago came together to take it on as an asset transfer, and subsequently have now run 2 share offers to raise money to gradually invest in developing that building, and they run it as a multi-purpose music venue and community hub. They have the MP there and other activities. So that's just one of the organisations and buildings that are using community shares. They are a flexible form of raising money, and it's not debt finance, it's not grant funding, it is what we call equity investments. And as well as doing that, if you buy shares, you technically become a member of the organisation. So if you run a community share offer, it's a good way of building a membership, which you would hope might be a bit of an active governance mechanism of your organisation. And it might also be a method for generating future trustees, directors of the organisation. In order to use community shares, you need to either be a cooperative or a community benefit society, which is something I won't go into too much detail about, but there's technicalities around legal structures and the exemptions that those bodies have in order to raise capital from individual investors. You can't do this as a private company or as a community interest company, for instance. Community shares are a bit different from your regular shares that you might be more familiar with on, say, the stock exchange. So those shares are very speculative, they go up and down in value. Community shares are not transferable, so you can't sell them on to somebody. You can only withdraw them, so you effectively can only sell them back to the society. And they are a patient investment. They're also flexible, so any terms that are with the share offer can vary. So if they offer 3% interest, that's usually based on them being able to afford to pay that. But the investments aren't a donation. So while they are a form of crowdfunding, they're a form of almost crowdfunding plus, because you also become a member when you invest, which you wouldn't under crowdfunding. But the money you invest, technically you can request to withdraw that in due course. And I say you set the terms, so it's a bit different to loan finance where you go to a bank and it's take it or leave it. This loan will be 8, 9, 10%. With community shares, as a community that comes together, you are effectively talking to other people in your defined community and understanding what is the rate of return that they need in order for them to invest. So effectively, you're short-circuiting the finance system, you're knocking out all the private banks, and you're talking to people directly to say, look, what is it that you would need to invest in this, which is quite different and quite radical. It is a means, like the picture of people investing in local projects, buildings and businesses. It connects money locally, as I've said. It isn't speculative, so the value does not fluctuate. It's also democratic, so no matter how much you invest, you only have one vote. So if you invest £1,000 or £10,000, you still only get one vote. So it does spread your roots quite deeply across the community, and it prevents any one individual from exerting too much due influence. And community shares themselves, they are an unregulated financial product, which is why we suggest people are careful with how they use them, and they use something like our community share standard mark to make sure they're adhering to good quality practices when they're using this. So it isn't a financially regulated product. So why might you use community shares? At the moment, the last few years, interest rates creeping up. Community shares, we've seen people raising community shares at sort of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% as a rate of interest. So you can offer to, you don't have to, but you can offer to pay investors interest on the money they've invested. Generally, that is a lot cheaper than taking on debt finance at the moment, and it is more flexible as well. We also know it's a resilient business model. Our research has found that 92% of organisations that have used community shares are still trading, and that's over the last 12 years, which compares very favourably with private sector enterprises and their failure rate. We also know that community shares attracts other investments. So when organisations go through the process of raising money through community shares, it's a really rigorous process that they go to. They realise that they have to stand up in front of people that they live with effectively, on the streets around them. So they want to make sure it's robust. That process does help the organisation to get really good information together, and it does make them more investable. So we tend to find, on average, of all the data we've got, for each pound that communities invest or they raise through community shares, they tend to attract an additional £1.18 in grant finance or debt finance on top of that. And we've seen many examples of people who've been rejected for grants, have gone off to do a share offer, and that has improved everything so much they've gone back to apply for grants, and the funders really like it because it's like live evidence for them of there is real demand for these projects and these proposals. Well, I've put there that we feel they're compelling stories. We know that 80% of people tend to invest because of the wider social and environmental benefits. So while you can offer a financial return, it is also about the social and environmental benefits. It's things that you can see and touch in your community generally. So they are physical things, and often they are things you might trade with as well. The example on your screen here is from a housing project in Leeds, who have done a couple of share offers now, and they buy empty properties, they raise capital to refurbish them, and they take long-term unemployed people, homeless people, they take them off the streets, they train them up, and they give them a house to live in at the end of it, an affordable house, but they also give them the skills to go on, either keep working at the organisation or to move elsewhere and use those skills elsewhere. So in terms of the size of the market and how many people are using community shares, since 2012, there's been over £220 million raised in community shares, over 150,000 individual investors. So it is becoming an increasingly common financial tool that people are using to raise capital. The picture on your screen here is actually from Home Firth, and I was at their AGM yesterday. This is an old educational technology building that was originally in Victorian times paid for via public subscription. It ended up falling into the hands of the local college, who then closed it, and it's sat empty for a number of years. And there was an arts collective locally their building had they'd been evicted from, and they wanted a new space, and they eventually took this building over. And they raised community shares to buy it. And they kind of feel like they're the organisation that bought the building twice, or the town that built the building twice, because it was originally purchased through subscription as well. But it's got that lovely story. And when I was there yesterday, a lot of the people were reminiscing about when they used the building as students formerly, and when their fathers went into the building historically as well. So it's got a lot of history in that building. So yeah, I mean, it does sound here backing projects they care about. I think that really is a key point, that it is often services and buildings and land that people really have a connection with, and that they can see and touch. In terms of geography, you'll see the map on the screen here, that the red areas are the urban areas, and the white numbers on black are numbers of share offers in those areas. So you can see it's reached all corners really of the UK. It's also reached an increasing number or variety of business models in the UK. So we've had football clubs, skate parks, breweries, lidos, queer venues, all sorts that have used community shares. Kirsten, you've got your hand up.
Only because I'll forget once we've gone past this slide, so I need to ask now. It looks on your map like you've got some areas that are really super busy, like 29 down at the very bottom and 26. Is that because they're cities, or is it because there are hotspots? Do people learn from each other or kind of get encouraged by each other?
So they are hotspots. The 29 represents a lot of community energy projects. So there's a lot more sun in the south of the UK. So a lot of solar projects over the years have started up there. The 26 is a bit of an anomaly in that there is one organisation that manages a lot of community energy projects that is based in that area. So while they're local community organisations that run the share offers, they're managed by an organisation based in Cumbria, which is why that's slightly distinct.
Just a follow-on one. Do you think people get better at them if they do them more than once?
Yes, yeah. And we always recommend working with what we call practitioners or experts who have raised money through community shares in the past, just to learn from their experience of running share offers, getting the documentation right, and the public appeal to people.
Thank you.
So I've got on the screen here just some recent share offers. We've got a bike project in Chichester, which is live at the moment, where there's a development trust that have set up a separate bike project. They're seeking to recycle bikes, reservice them, sell them on, and also provide bike servicing. So there's a community-run project. We've got an old Methodist chapel on the outskirts of Leeds there, the top left. Got a number of pubs. We've got an arts organisation in Leicester called Two Queens that are currently raising money through community shares. 3 Seas is a housing-based project. Longlands Common there is a land-based project. That share offer is currently live. Bristol Energy Cooperative announced their 10th community share offer. So their share offer is currently live as well, as is Grimsby's. And then in the middle is Glen Withis, who are on their 3rd share offer now, I think. And they've raised quite a lot of money, into the millions, for their community-owned distillery in Scotland, which was a new start distillery. But really interesting in terms of, sort of changing the economy of a community-owned distillery. They use the profits for local benefit and local community projects, which is great. If we come on to this screen, if you were looking for, well, what share offers exist, where can I go and look at some? There are 2 big platforms which tend to be the 2 main ones that people use. So people either run a share offer themselves and do a lot of it offline, locally, or on their own website, or they'll use one of these platforms, which is almost like an eBay, putting your product on this platform in order to attract a bigger audience. So FX and Crowdfunder are the 2 big ones here. There are others as well. These 2 are live. So at the moment, there's Hook Norton Community Land Trust, who are building affordable housing with a really high environmental threshold in terms of the low running costs and the low carbon ongoing output of the housing, which is really interesting. And they've built a little bit on a lot of the work that Oxfordshire Land Trust previously did with their share offer, where they raised almost 600,000. With the Oxfordshire one, it's quite interesting because while it was new build, it's Community Benefit Society that ran the share offer. They are working on setting up a cooperative amongst the residents who've moved into the housing. It's like a second cooperative to manage and look after the housing. And then Otley Common is this one on the edge of Leeds, the old Methodist chapel, which I mentioned earlier, which has recently launched its share offer. So there's those. We also list on our website at that link there all the share offers which have received the community shares standard mark. So you can see a few of them here as well. So the other live ones are listed on there as well. Yes, there's something on hand. Did you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if you'd noticed. I've got 2 other questions now. One is when you said that those companies were the 2 main companies, do they take, obviously they have to have money in order to function, so they must maybe take a share or a fee?
They do both take a fee. Crowdfunder will offer a reduced fee if you've got the share standard mark. People need to weigh up whether it's worth paying that fee in order to reach a bigger audience. FX will tell you that they have a list, like a bank of high net worth investors who are serial investors, which is one of their sales pitches. And if you list on there, they will push your share offer to those investors. So yeah, they have a fee, and crowdfund has a fee as well. It depends really what you're doing. If you're a local pub, quite often we see people sort of know everyone locally. They think they can raise the money locally. They feel they don't need it. But other times we do see people find it easier to raise a lot of money through, you're looking to raise bigger amounts and from a bigger audience. The platforms tend to be helpful. A few more examples. I won't go into too much detail, but this is Barford Tigers Sports Club in Birmingham, who came to us as an existing sports club but unincorporated, and were interested in the cooperative movement, the cooperative ideals, and wanted to run a share offer because they have been offered some land to develop new sports facilities. So while they are a hockey club, it's a very diverse area of Birmingham. They've also got a huge existing membership base, so they feel like there's a potential to tap into that. So we gave them some initial advice and support to test out whether they thought this was something they wanted to do. We helped them set up the right legal structure. They've subsequently developed, advanced to developing their share offer documentation. We're expecting their share offer to launch in the next 6 months or so. So they've started really from scratch and come into us, which has been really interesting. And then secondly, York Supplies in Birmingham, another one in Birmingham actually. So this is a hardware store where the owner wanted to retire, and the residents were quite put out by the fact that if he was going to retire, what was going to happen to this building. And it's the sort of place where if you just wanted a screw, you could go in and buy a screw, and he'd talk to you for half an hour about everything else under the sun, and he knew all his customers. So it wasn't like you go to your B&Q's, your home bases, where you have to buy 50 screws and you only ever need one. So all the residents really loved this. They floated the idea of to him, could we form a community-based cooperative to buy you out and run it as a community-based organisation? And they actually did that really quickly. They raised over £300,000. What was quite impressive was the number of investors. They had over 700 investors there. We had a tale of someone saving up like 20p's and pound coins and putting it all together until they got enough to buy a share, which was lovely. But they were successful. By doing that, they also attracted some money from the government's community ownership fund. So they have bought out the existing owner of the business and the building. They now run it as a community-based hardware store, which is it's really cool. So in terms of how community shares might work, on your screens here, you can see Headingley Development Trust in Leeds. They have done a couple of share offers now. One, they call it the Headingley Investment Fund, where they raised a chunk of money to do different things. Part of that was to refinance some loan finance they had. Part of it was to buy a house to let as affordable housing. Another part was a greengrocer. Similar story, was retiring, the building was going to close. They stepped in, they bought the greengrocers business. They now run that as a community-owned greengrocers in that area, which is quite a student-heavy area. So they were quite keen to kind of make sure that everything would turn into bars and everything, and that there was a variety of shopping experiences available on the high street. But how do they work? So really talk about sort of understanding what your finance needs are. There are different types of investment you might need, whether that's startup investment, or whether it's a big chunk of investment to buy something like a building. Unless there's support and interest from whatever your community is, then you're going to struggle as well. So you do need at a pretty early stage to start identifying who the community is, understanding their interests, their needs. Will they use this? Do they buy into what you want to do? Do they want to get involved? Are they ever going to want to buy shares in this? And then, if that's all starting to fit together and some outlines or numbers start to look like they might work, as an organisation, you need to check your constitution, which for a cooperative or community benefit society is called your rules. You would need to look at preparing a business plan, a share offer document, and ultimately run a campaign that sits behind that as well. Skip past that and just focus a bit more on running share offers. So in terms of what what often is the starting point for share offers. Typically, in recent years, we see it where a building's about to shut. So often it might be a council is about to close a library, or a pub company is going to close a pub, or someone is going to retire from a business and it's going to close. So often there's a urgency of saving an asset, and that is a great story locally. A lot of those stories have translated across to the media. We see much more coverage, things like The Guardian, the BBC, of community share offers, where it's about people come together to save an asset. But otherwise, people sometimes are looking to raise money for refurbishing or expanding an asset or developing a new asset. Sometimes it's about an organisation that's perhaps running a bit low on cash and it wants to remodel what it's doing, so might want to refinance. I feel they're often time critical. Often people need to move quite quickly to do these things. So it's worth thinking about what type of money you need, whether it's short-term money, long-term money, whether it's revenue money, capital money. There are different types of share offers that you can do. I won't dwell on this too much. The most common type is what we call a time-bound offer, where you open on a certain date. You might keep it open for 4, 6, 8 weeks, might extend it for a couple of more weeks. And you try and concentrate everyone's energy and interest in the share offer in that time. What we've found is that people also now run what we call an open share offer, where instead of having a time frame where it's open and closed, people keep it open. And often that's once you've run a share offer and you raise a lot of capital, maybe 5 years down the line, people have moved in and out of the area, and you want to let new people to come in and join the organisation. You might want to take a bit more money from new people, which can help pay off other people as well. We have something called the Standard Mark frameworks. So we have an assessment framework for Community Share Standard Mark, which we can share with people, which gives you all the areas that it would be assessed against, which you can use as a framework for developing share offers. So there's just a list here really of some of the stages that people go through of running share offers, and that initial catalyst is sort of often a bit of a mad scramble of who can we find who knows about any of this stuff. Sometimes those inquiries come to us, and we often put people in touch with what we call practitioners. These are people that we've trained up, that we know their onions on this stuff. And we start to get them working with people on a more detailed basis of milestoning out some of the steps they might need to take. So that includes some community engagement, but also starting some online presence of, if something doesn't exist online, people just don't believe that it exists. If they feel there's scope for this, Co-operatives UK can help with the registration of organisations, so we can help set up these societies, so we can help to set up a community benefit society. We can help you get charitable status to sit alongside that as well, and make sure that constitution enables you to issue shares. People need to work out the basic numbers. How much do you need to raise? How much might this business make? Does it all sort of look like it might stack up? Starting with a bit of a marketing, sort of outreach campaign, and then the details of the business plan, and pulling that together. Often that's a smaller group of people who start to focus on that. So we tend to suggest to have a detailed business plan with all the finances in that, usually a spreadsheet that sits behind that with projections for up to 5 years or maybe longer. And then a shorter share offer document, which is much more the glitzy document that you're sharing around more publicly with people, which has like the key terms, the key details of what you want to do, of what the offer is to people. And then one of the final stages is, if you're going to go down this route, getting the Community Share Standard Mark, and then ideally you might launch, and then you would keep marketing the campaign, and hopefully raise the investment that you need to raise. In terms of the Community Share Standard Mark, it's an assessment against the organisation's rules, so its constitution. It's an assessment against what application forms you're using, so how you're proposing to hold the money, but also what questions you're asking, and make sure there are statements on there to make sure people are aware of the risks involved with your share offer. It would look through the offer document. It would also look through the business plan, and you can see on your screen there the headings really of the bits that it looks at. So it is quite thorough in terms of all the bits that it checks over. And I'll just put on here about what is the investment potential and starting to understand this, which is something you'd need to do at a fairly early stage, but it's a discussion we always end up having with people of, we think the pub's going to cost this, or we think to build this housing it's going to cost this much and we need to raise this much in community shares. Can it be done? And there are so many different ways of calculating that, and often it's a bit of a feel of, do we feel this can be done? Has it been done before? Has anyone raised this much in this area or in this sort of business type before? But there are different ways you can look at it, and this is just one of the ways which, if you were looking to raise £400,000, how might you go about it? So you can think, who is your community? In this instance, we've suggested there might be 4,000 people in this community. Generally, sorry, I've just got a dry throat. Generally, your rules would suggest, or your rules would dictate who can invest and who can buy shares, and often that's people over 16. So if there are 4,000 people, it's worth then knocking off the people who can't buy shares. So perhaps that takes you down to 3,200. You might want to look at how many people do you physically think as a group of people you are going to be able to reach with all the marketing tools you have, be that social media, door knocking, running events, pop-up events, etc., etc. Maybe you don't feel you possibly going to be able to reach and get the message out to everyone, so perhaps you can only reach 2,000 people. That's just reaching them to tell them about what you're doing. Not everyone, unfortunately, is going to be in a position to invest on one over. So maybe in this instance, we're saying, well, maybe 5% of that are people who are going to turn into investors. So that gets you down to 100 people. Well, you can see we started at 4,000. We've sort of whittled it down quite a bit here. If it is only 5%, the numbers there suggest that those 100 people are going to have to invest £4,000 each. So you then need to think, is that realistic? And perhaps like gauging that with even just committee members sat around there, like, are we going to put in £4,000 each? Might get you to start thinking, actually, we need to reach more than 4,000 people. So we need to reach beyond this area, or we need to convert more than 5% of people. Or we need to lower our aspirations and we need to perhaps only raise £200,000 and take on a £200,000 loan that might sit alongside that. And often what people do is they launch a share offer with an optimum amount that they seek to raise. So in this instance, it might be £400,000, a minimum amount. So they might say, well, we've spoken to the bank will offer us a loan for £200,000, but it's going to be at 10%, so it's going to be quite expensive. So we'd rather take it from the community at 2%. But the minimum we need from the community is 200, and they might say actually the maximum we'll take from the community is 450, so we can do a little bit extra if loads of people want to invest. So people often can cover themselves by having a plan B behind the scenes as well. And only a couple more slides, but just to come on to one of the most important parts. If you do want to look at a share offer that's been pretty successful recently, it's one down in Cornwall, Soul Farm, which some of you may have come across. So this was a farm that transferred into community ownership, and they raised I can't remember, maybe £300,000-400,000 recently in community shares to buy new polytunnels, to invest in the business really, and to expand their food offering. I've put it on here just because the campaign around it was really strong. The graphics, which you can see an example of here, were really strong. They'd clearly spent a lot of time and energy on it. Their Instagram posts are really visual. It's stuff like that that you do really need to put the energy into. And I've put on here, it's the most overlooked thing and under-resourced thing. People sort of get to the launch and they sort of collapse, like, great, it's done. But the worst thing is that you launch a share offer and day 2, still no one's invested. Day 5, no one's invested. So you need to line up some soft investees who will invest and keep the momentum going. You don't want the momentum to drop. But you also need to think about who's going to lead that campaign during this intensive period of trying to reach, in the past example, what was it, 3,200 people. You need to reach as many as you can. And often that is about having very visual graphics that you use on either stuff you hand out in person or you use online, and keeping stuff updated online as well. Just the final point I put on there is about the social capital as well. So I think where people have been a little bit shy and nervous to speak to people about things is where share offers have struggled. It does unfortunately need to bring out the extrovert in all of your committee members to go and speak to everyone and just sort of hammer home the message of, look, if you want this to succeed, if you want the pub in this village to be saved, you need to invest, and you need to tell all of your friends to invest. So we do have this thing called the Booster Fund, which I mentioned earlier. We helped this pub in Cumbria to be saved. Since taking it over, they've refurbished it, so it looks a lot better like this now, and they've also put a campsite on the back of it, and they've started to develop new services with it as well. They've got some eco pods now, I think, as well. So we can offer grants, investments. We've to date invested over £4 million in 85 different community share offers. So we can invest alongside community investments, and that helps to encourage individual community investors that this is a reasonably good share offer, and that Co-operatives UK are backing it, so perhaps we ought to back it, and it helps communities to reach their investment goals. So if anyone is interested, we can speak to people and provide you with resources and help to start on your journey. I've put 2 documents on here, which Kirsten, do you want to come in?
No, I'll wait actually until you get to the end now, because I can see that you're wrapping up to the end, and I'll save my question. I'm sure there are some questions in the room as well. Sorry,
I'm home alone at the moment. Well, I'm not home alone. My son's just wandered in and asked me a question as well. So that's the nature of working from home. So I've just put 2 reports on here. If you are interested in a bit more deeper reading on this, we've got an impact report, some of our activities from last year, and we've got a report we put out earlier in 2023, which we titled around this notion of communities doing it for themselves, which was very much, we feel like people using community shares is people not waiting for stuff to happen. It's people being annoyed and agitated that stuff isn't better, and realizing, well, actually, maybe we're the ones that have to make it better. So it was sort of riffing on that theme, and that was to celebrate really 10 years of Co-operatives UK leading the community shares unit. So there's a lot more data and information in those if you are interested. And yeah, that's the final bit from me. I don't know if that's 40 minutes or not, but I've rattled through a lot of stuff there, and inevitably with these things I've probably missed some bits or skirted over some bits or talked about things that haven't made much sense. So do please ask any questions, no such thing as silly or awkward questions either.
Thank you very much, Sean. There might be some questions from the room, so I'm just going to wait for someone to wave at me. But in the meantime, I was wondering if you've given us some really interesting examples of, pubs, community centres. I really like the group who are doing up empty houses and housing themselves and others. I think that's amazing. Have you had any experience of working with groups who perhaps want to do things like one planet, by land in order to do so, say, for example, self-sufficiency or co-housing projects or anything like that?
Just try to find the unmute button. We've seen a bit of a trend in recent last 18 months, really, of many more land projects coming forward. They tend to be more, at the moment, they tend to be more sort of farming, community-supported agriculture type projects. The co-housing less so, because, and even the community-led housing stuff can be a struggle, because if you think of a pub, it's, most people can go in and out of the pub, so you're sort of interested in doing it. Community-led housing is kind of a harder sell. If we're going to build 16 houses, it might house 22 people, say. What is the incentive for me to invest in that? Okay, there's a financial return, and maybe there's a guilt trip on, maybe I'm an older person in a community that's got younger children, and I'm thinking I want that generation to be able to have affordable housing.
So you're saying that in some ways it's about what it is you're selling in a way. I don't mean selling, but people need to buy into something. They need to feel as if they have something that they're investing in.
I think it's very much about the story that sits behind that. We're all humans, and it's what is that human interest story that pulls at our heartstrings, that pulls on the emotional side of things of us making an investment and getting stuff over the line. They talk about, marketing, that thing of you have to repeat the message a number of times before it even sinks in, which is why politicians just sound like robots, because they think that's working. But I think there is something in that in terms of trying to get the message out of, we want you to buy or invest in this proposition. In terms of co-housing, I think it's just a little more difficult because it's what is that wider benefit? So that might fit more of a cooperative model, and I'm getting a bit technical now, but a cooperative is more where the members are just the members of that organisation. The benefit is for the benefit of the members, whereas the community benefit society, which we tend to see more of in the community shares world, is wider than that. It's more for the benefit of the community rather than just the members.
Thank you, John. Now, I don't know if we've got any questions coming from the room.
Yep, got a question.
Okay.
It's about the offer itself, which is seems very good, especially if someone's got the ethics for going forward in that way. But people's life circumstances change, and the idea that you can't sell it on the profiteering, that's very nice as well, and it's down. But if someone wants, just using the example that you roughed out on, they've invested their £4,000 and something changes in their life and they really want that back, they want to withdraw. Obviously, where's the liquidity for that? And what happens if there's a multiple circumstances that within the community and quite a few people put £4,000 back? Where's the liquidity for that?
Yeah.
How is that managed?
Okay, so in the share offer document, you would set out your ambitions for how much capital you're planning to be able to return each year. So for instance, if you say we're hoping to be able to return 10% of share capital each year, if you do the maths, them factoring returning the capital over 10 years. And they would also say we will develop, or we have developed, a withdrawals policy, and that withdrawals will be dealt with as per the policy, which tends to be first come, first serve, but they're trying to handle any hardship requests as well. The liquidity is managed either through trading surpluses, as it were, so profits. So the money the organisation makes over and above its expenses that it can put aside, it can use that to fund withdrawals. It can also fund withdrawals from raising new share capital as well.
Okay, so that would be something which would be put forward to people, that there is the intention that this is returnable in certain circumstances upon request. And
it should all be laid out.
And it's not baked in because circumstances may not make that available at the moment you want it. So that's something that the investor has to take on board.
It is, yes. And as an investor, you become a member, so you can attend AGMs and you can hold their feet to the fire of, well, why have you not returned capital yet, or how are things going? So it does give you a bit of a voice in that.
Thanks.
And what we find in practice is it depends, because if people have invested £50, sometimes people forget about it. If people have invested £10,000, they tend not to forget about it, and they are more keen on getting their money back. So it does depend a bit on what the share offer is and how much people put in.
Okay, are there other questions in the room?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to follow up to that one, which is in terms of liquidity for people pulling out or selling, in practice, does that mean that most of these projects have to have a fund to enable that? Is that what happens in practice, or do you find that most people have enough profit to be able to afford to You see what I mean? I feel like there's going to be a restriction there somewhere, because unless you're a very profitable organisation, so in practice, do people just end up having to have a sort of surplus fund just in case people want to sell?
Yeah, it's a bit of both really. So you would plan out how much you can afford to return each year. You would make that clear in the offer so people are sort of clear with what that is. That isn't always what happens in practice, although sometimes people have better years than others. Yeah, we would kind of suggest that people keep a fund's general reserves to one side, but they would then at the AGM make decisions on, can we afford to allow withdrawals this year? And often it's very common practice that the first couple of years they have a sort of lock-in period where they say no capital or interest will be paid within the first 2 years to allow the business to establish trading profits. All of that will then subject to affordability.
You answered I think you just answered my follow-up question. I think I got you right in saying that sometimes so the share never increases in value, but some organisations will offer to pay the interest on whatever is invested. So I think that's what you were saying. And I think you were just saying that sometimes they will pause that for the first few years to allow the organisation to. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
If say 10 years down the track, all the capital's being returned to the members, who now owns the business?
So when you buy community shares, you become a member. So it then comes down to looking at the rules and how the rules are written. The Co-ops UK model rules talk about a £1 minimum share. So that's like a £1 minimum membership share. So technically, when you're returning the capital, you might just return £99 and they could leave £1 in because that is then their membership share, and that enables them to stay as a member. But you're right in flagging that if people are returned all the capital they put in, they would cease to be a member. But there are ways around that. So they can open up like a membership scheme, and they can have a membership system where people would buy a share for, well, it can be £1 or it can be £5, or it can be whatever.
Right.
Thank you. Any more in the room?
That was my question as well, but seeing as you asked that one, do you encourage schemes to kind of keep membership rolling? So if the criteria have been met, to then roll into a kind of new phase in some way?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there are always investment needs in businesses. In the last 2 years, energy efficiency measures have been a big thing that people have been rushing to put in insulation, new windows. That's something that people have sought investment for. But I think where we've seen some more established, say, community shops that perhaps did a share offer 15 years ago, and they haven't run new share offers or really thought about the membership element of the business, they've ended up with a aging membership who were the members 15 years ago. They're really animated at that point, but they're sort of getting to a stage now where loads of new people have moved into the village who've never had the opportunity to buy shares, and really, like, they could have had a new share offer to raise new capital if they needed it, or they could have had a membership mechanism. And there is something about a lot of these assets, the skill set required for the people to come together to save a building like this. They're often quite different skills and people you need to then going on to run a building and then run a business, and say 15 years down the line, reanimate that business and continue to make it relevant. So yeah, we would definitely recommend that people lean on the membership element of this cooperative structure that exists underneath it and make the most of it and make that open to people. Because also it's like no one wants to be a trustee for 25 years unless you're really dedicated. So it's like you need to think about your succession planning, bringing in new people and new blood. And membership is like a good way of like the first step through the door. I think you're on mute, Kirsten.
Oh, still can't hear you.
Any more? No? Okay, so John, thank you very much. It feels like you've given us a really solid taster into community shares. Bit of a heavy topic actually for Friday night. So bad.
Yeah, sorry about
No, not your problem. It was more, you know, the slot we were given. But thank you very much for your time, and I will share your details with anyone who is interested in perhaps pursuing this a bit further.
Lovely.
And thank you for giving up your time on a Friday evening.
Well, thanks for having me. I better go and check on the kids then.
Okay, good night.
Bye.
Okay, so thanks everybody, and I think I can hear a Kaylee going on in the background here in Braziers Park. And for those of you at home, have a nice evening. So okay, don't forget we've got a book launch tomorrow, and then that's us done. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.